Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm delighted, ladies and gentlemen, to have this opportunity to address the meeting. And the World Economic Forum is a highly esteemed organisation, and I recognise the importance of this annual meeting as you showcase this great event. And as key players in the world economy, you play a crucial role in forging new partnerships to make the world a safer and a more prosperous place. I'm here today in my capacity as President of the European Union, a position that I'm honoured to hold at a time when we'll witness the historic enlargement of the European Union from 15 to 25 member states. For Ireland, this is our sixth presidency, faced with a challenging agenda. The ongoing negotiations on a constitutional treaty for Europe is clearly a major priority for us. We're currently consulting with our partners, assessing the scope of progress in these negotiations. And if a real prospect of agreement seems possible, Chairman, we will seize the opportunity. The Irish presidency will spare no efforts to make progress and to facilitate consensus during our term of office. The negotiations on a constitutional treaty, important as they are not the important item on the European agenda, or at least not the only one. We have many issues that we want to deal with. We've always recognised that enlargement of the Union and the European economic and social agenda would be central to our presidency. And prior to the failure to agree the constitutional treaty in Brussels in December, all our effort had been put into other issues, and particularly the economic and social agenda. At a time when there's widespread evidence of a growing sense of public disconnection with the European Union, there's a pressing need for Europe to demonstrate that it can make a real difference to the lives of its people. I've been listening, Chairman, to your debate and listening to some of the challenges and some of the issues where we have to complete these issues, and very much note what Niall Fitzgerald has been saying about the Patent Directive, where our Deputy Leader in Taoiseach, Bertie Ahern, has put that as a priority to complete, because we know and realise these challenges for us. Real opportunity, real prosperity and real security, and these are the foundations in which the European Union has been built, and these are the issues our people expect us to work on together. And these foundations must be reinforced in a large European Union. On the 1st of May, we will welcome 10 new member states into our union. We'll finally end the artificial divide that has separated our peoples in Europe. And this is enormously significant for the European Union and for each member state. And this enlargement will bring the population of the European Union to 450 million people, create the largest single market on the planet. And this enlarged union must be a dynamic economic force that drives sustainable economic development if it's to be successful. And we want to see a strong and vibrant European Union, ready and willing to accommodate further expansion in the years ahead. Enlargement, Chairman, will pose new challenges for the European economy. But with these challenges come exciting new opportunities for growth, for trade, for tourism, for collaboration in research and knowledge networks. And our enlarged European Union will be a union where knowledge, innovation and ideas will be the key resources for economic success for the future. The main economic challenge that the new member states face is to catch up in terms of income levels with the rest of the Union. And taking account of differences in purchasing power, GDP per capita in the new member states is about 45% of the average of the EU level at present. Some progress towards economic convergence with the EU 15 has already been achieved, but the income per capita levels of the new member states remain unacceptably low compared to the European Union average. Ireland is perhaps the best example, Chairman, of a member state that has, over the course of its membership of now exactly 30 years, achieved full economic convergence from a position on accession of just under 60% of EU's average GDP per capita. That success, of course, would not have been achieved without European Union membership. An effective and well-resourced cohesion policies will play a key part in ensuring economic convergence for new member states. But the creation of both a fully effective single market and the economic and social policies that support growth and convergence across the European Union will also be critical to success. And this is why, Chairman, the Irish presidency has placed the Union's economic agenda at the centre of its presidency programme. In order to ensure the success of the enlarged European Union in the global economy, we must promote growth and competitiveness. At the Spring European Council in March, in 2 months' time, we'll be seeking to make significant progress in these areas. Back in 2000, almost 4 years ago, the European Union agreed a strategy, the Lisbon Agenda, to make Europe, by 2010, the most competitive and dynamic knowledge-based economy, capable of sustaining economic growth with more and better jobs and more social cohesion. And this goal has been instrumental in speeding up reform in Europe and in strengthening a modern, successful European economy. We have made progress since 2000, there is no doubt about that, but our results are mixed. Europe's recent economic performance has been disappointing. We need to give fresh impetus to what we've set out to achieve. If we do not do so, then Europe will continue to lag and we will not reach our full potential. If the Lisbon Agenda, we have a strategy and we must implement it, and we will do all we can in the Irish presidency, not alone to bring ourselves up to what we believe is a fair benchmark for the year 2004, but to set the agenda for the mid-term position for next year and for thereafter. And these are, I think, at times where we see some welcome signs of global economic recovery on the horizon. And Europe must avail of the economic upturn to deepen the process of economic and social reform, both at EU and at national levels. And the gulf between the EU's ambition to be the most competitive and dynamic knowledge-based economy in the world and the reality, of course, is still very wide. We are still some way behind the United States and other global economies. We have to compete in a rapidly integrating world market that includes, for example, a rapidly growing Chinese economy. And the Lisbon Agenda is the strategic framework within which Europe can increase its rate of economic growth. And our twin priorities at the Spring European Council next March are growth and employment. Fostering competitiveness is the key to tackling these, in our view. And in order to enhance our competitiveness, the European Union must promote a business environment in which enterprise can flourish, in which regulatory burdens are eased, and in which efficient capital markets operate. And we must focus on increasing investment in physical infrastructure, in education and training, and in research and development, and ensuring that our people can respond to and exploit the opportunities of the knowledge-based economy, creating an environment and creating the kind of employment where markets that provides more and better employment for our citizens. And presently, in many parts of Europe and EU overall figures, unemployment is high. Exploiting the full potential of the single market and developing with the enlarged union a regulatory and business environment for which companies can compete confidently in the global markets. And last but not least, Chairman, maintaining effective levels of social protection and cohesiveness. The EU Competitiveness Council has set an ambitious programme for a competitive and a dynamic Europe. Many of the issues that you have been discussing are on the agenda as part of their work. And the Council will work effectively to raise Europe's growth potential through increasing productivity. And our long-term prosperity will also depend on the development of a careful balance between fiscal restraint and necessary infrastructural investment. Investment in capital is essential for competitiveness and growth. And this has been supported through the growth initiative at EU level. And governments across the enlarged European Union are being encouraged to make the necessary capital investments at national level so that we can help to bridge the deficiencies and gaps that are presently there. Chairman, central to raising productivity and investment in people lies the issues of skills, of research and lifelong learning. And such investment is vital if we're to improve more and better employment for our citizens. Productivity will not come by talking about it, and there's been a fair amount of that from my years in the European Union at various councils. But if we do follow the policies of investing in our people, investing in skills, investing in training, investing in enhancing our capabilities to use information communication technologies, then we will get productivity, and we see that in the successful companies that do so. We are not close to meeting the Lisbon employment target of 70% and the related social targets as yet, and that is obvious from the analysis of the European Commission's document published this very week. However, a lot has been achieved. In particular, the European Union already has a strong record in the social policy area, in providing social protection, in equality, in combating disadvantage. It also has had significant benefits for workers in terms of health and safety regulation, in modernising our workplaces and improving their conditions of employment. But we need now to deliver more quality employment in Europe. All Member States have been asked to reaffirm their commitment to the employment objectives set out and agreed at European level. More recently, the report of the Employment Task Force chaired by Wim Kok, a former Dutch Prime Minister, provides us with an opportunity to take firm action on employment. And the Irish presidency for these months ahead will, through our work programme in this area, will be informed by the Task Force report, will build on the EU employment guidelines, and the way ahead is very clear. It's essential that we now take decisive action at Member States and European level in many of the issues which you have been addressing this very week in various committees. And of course, what does this mean? It means that at every level we must increase the ability of workers and enterprises to respond to change, to the reform agenda. We must make work more attractive. We must ensure more effective investment in human capital. I am working to ensure the European Council gives a clear signal of Europe's intent to act on employment and on the general employment agenda. In Ireland, Chairman, and across Europe, a commitment to sound public finances is an essential part of our growth strategy. Fiscal discipline at government level is required to underpin general economic confidence. And it is true that in times of economic weakness, countries face more severe budgetary pressures. And the Stability and Growth Pact has come under a testing time these past months. However, the fundamental commitment to fiscal stability has remained solid, and the sensible fiscal rules of the Stability and Growth Pact continue to command support. Of course, every set of rules may need to be modified from time to time to ensure continued relevance to the times that we live in. And no one pretends that Europe's systems of economic coordination could not be improved, particularly in the light of Europe's recent experience of weak growth and fiscal strain. My own view that a period of reflection on the rules of the Stability Pact and on how these rules operate to support growth and prosperity would be useful for these months ahead. I note that the European Commission will soon be bringing forward its own proposals for improving the European Union's system of economic governance, and I'm sure this will be an important input into the debate and the deliberations which are necessary and which will happen. To conclude, Chairman, my view in relation to Europeans' economic development is simple and straightforward. We already know what needs to be done. We have debated that for these past 4 years. We have analysed them. They're reported again this week in the Commission document. We have to stick to the policies we've already identified and, more importantly, implement them with determination. And the European Union has identified a series of reforms that has provided the instruments that will enable us to successfully achieve our goals. And I think they are clear and I think they're understood. And what's necessary is the will to implement them. And true, the 2010 target set at Lisbon may be ambitious. It was intended to be in 2000. It was to set out a framework for a decade ahead that would challenge us, but that would genuinely give Europe a path to make it strong, to be able to make it compete, to be able to take on the challenges that are happening in other global blocks around the world. But I believe that we have and will the ability to rise to the challenge, and even if slow, or even because some of the difficulties of the last 4 years, and either indirectly or directly, that have affected that, we should revitalise the European economy and ensure that the ongoing success of the European project, particularly as we head to enlargement. That, Chairman, is what we will endeavour to do, and particularly on our economic agenda, and particularly in the period as we lead up to the March European Summit, the Economic Summit, to deal particularly with the Lisbon Strategy. And as I said, not only to try to bring ourselves up to where we should be as quickly as possible, but in areas where that cannot be done, to try to clearly benchmark ourselves and prepare ourselves for the moves that have to be made in the years directly ahead. And from an Irish perspective, we are glad that we're the first presidency that not only is dealing with an annual programme working with our Netherlands colleagues, but also with the presidencies of 6 presidencies between 2004 and 2006, where we can get coherence in the policy agenda, not jumping every 6 months from one item to another, but where we can have an effort over a sustained period of 3 years to implement a stated policy, and a policy which we clearly believe as the Irish presidency we should implement. Thank you.
Thank you. Prime Minister, thank you. I think we have about 5 minutes, and I gather you've agreed to answer a couple of questions. I can't see anyone in the audience. The lights are so bright. There's one question there and another question here. You've chosen yourselves. Go ahead.
Taoiseach Brian Havel at DePaul University, Chicago, USA. You mentioned that this is the 6th Irish presidency, and given structural changes in the European Union, it may also be the last presidency that Ireland holds. In light of that, what would you like your legacy to be as President of the Council of the European Union, and would that legacy include a new European constitution? Thank you, Taoiseach.
I think you just speak, Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, clearly I would like to complete the Intergovernmental Conference and complete the Constitution. We have actively started the first month of our presidency doing that. Within a few days I will have discussed this issue either by conference call or in person with all 28 members of the IGC group. That includes the 25 and Romania, Bulgaria and Turkey. It's going to be difficult to do, but clearly we would like to do that. But equally what we've been talking about here, the challenge for Europe as an economic bloc is a pressing agenda for us. I've been an enormous supporter of the Lisbon strategy from the start and long before it. I've previously been Prime Minister, as Finance Minister, Social Affairs Minister, so I've been involved in the economic agenda of Europe for 17, 18 years directly. And I think there is a great opportunity for us now, having identified the problems, identified the kind of dossiers, the kind of directives that we need to do to take on the challenges around us. Not being hostile to them, it's good. I think that we're competition from the ASEAN countries, from China, from India, from elsewhere, but there's a challenge for Europe, and I think collectively working we have to get on with that. And we put in an enormous amount of effort in the Irish presidency, not in the last few weeks, but in the last year. Bertie Ahern, as Deputy Leader of our government, and myself and other ministers, in trying to get a spirit of cooperation to deal with some of the main, to finish the internal market in the services area. It's about time we did that. The patent directive, everything Niall Fitzgerald said is absolutely true. There are a number of other directives that have been sitting around in the financial services area. Now, we're not trying to change the world in 6 months, but there are a handful of items where we genuinely would like to see done. And I would like to see that legacy, because I think it would be very beneficial for Europe going forward, and of course a knock-on effect for Ireland. So we have our own selfish reasons about these issues too.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Philippe de Buc, Secretary General of UNICEF. We had the opportunity, Taoiseach, to present our views, and we are grateful because it's a very long time ago that we have seen a political leader so going forward for competitiveness and the entrepreneurship in Europe, and I think that's important. So we wish you all success for the coming Spring Summit. But when we look to the implementation, it's of course a national problem. And I think now that we will have European election on the one hand, the new Commission later on this year, also you don't think that we have an enormous effort to do on communication, because the Lisbon strategy is a perfect one, but to explain that to the people is sometimes very difficult, and to make governments responsible for that. And you have a very large experience in explaining to your people what Europe is all about. What are your advice to the other governments?
Well, I think it is always the difficulty if you're trying to explain to your electorate or your people, if you have a set of of jargon, whether it's EU jargon or any other jargon. It's not very easy. But the reason the Lisbon agenda and the economic agenda is important is because for our people, employment is important. Their quality of life is important. Their standard of living is important. And the success of how Europe actually does is dependent on how our people, the kind of life that they can have, the job they can have, the holiday they can have, the experience that they can have. And I think very, very much our Irish experience over these years, a decade ago we had 1 million people working in Ireland, now we've 1.8. I think people do understand employment. The reason we have bridged the gap from 60% to now something like 110 in EU terms is because you can improve your standard of living, you can improve growth. And I do think it is possible, particularly when unemployment is almost 9% in Europe, to be able to, and I appreciate the dialogue that we've had recently in these discussions. But rather than talking about the Lisbon agenda or an economic strategy, the bottom line of that is employment. It is a success of entrepreneurs, it's a success of innovation, it's the advancement of the workforce. But in the end, it's about people having employment and being able to live. And I think for our European colleagues, that's what we should be emphasising to our public. Because if we produce documents of 100 benchmarks and all kind of economic analysis, that's important for us to do. But it's not the way to go out and put it to the people. And I have been emphasising all years to colleagues, we should keep it simple, we should keep growth, we should keep competitiveness and employment and quality of life and the standard of our people. They're the issues that we should use when we're talking to our parliaments and talking to our people in day-to-day life. And I think, as you've seen in some of the discussions we've had recently, it is possible to do that.
Taoiseach, thank you very much indeed. We are running 20 minutes over, so I'm going to bring it to a close now. I'm not going to give you a summary because that'll take 2 or 3 more minutes, but what I would like to underline is that we have, in the briefer session than we had planned on future of transatlantic relations, really taken the argument well beyond NATO's security, beyond Iraq and those kind of issues, to issues like demographics, to issues like aging, to immigration, economic divergence, and even down to the nitty-gritty of barrier-free business, even patents and how long it takes to get a company incorporated. All those surely are part of the whole matrix and spectrum of transatlantic relations. That's my very brief summary. Thank you to all my colleagues here on the platform.